The purpose of this presentation is to examine future directions and options for the Gun Lake Volunteer Fire Protection Service. The content of this presentation was delivered at a public meeting in Gun Lake on June the 12th, 2016. Based on feedback received at that meeting, the SLRD is now extending this web-based opportunity for residents who were unable to attend that meeting to make their opinion heard as well. The Squamish-Lillooet Regional District's mission is to enhance the quality of life of constituents through the facilitation of regional and community services for the benefit of present and future generations. SLRD Electoral Area A, which is where Gun Lake resides, is directed. The Electoral Area Director is Debbie DeMare. Her alternate is Norm Werner, and those two individuals are the elected officials for Goldbridge, Braylorne, Gun Lake, Gun Creek, Tyotin Lake, and Marshall Lake. Just a note on cost centers and funding. As a regional district, the SLRD has 89 services for which there is a cost center for each. Every service is accounted for separately using a dedicated fund. This means that the SLRD does not have the same sort of flexibility for moving money around between cost centers as a municipality does. Each service must identify its own revenues, in this case tax requisition or parcel tax, to pay for fire services. Costs must then be allocated to or shared by the members that participate in the service, in this case the residents of Gun Lake. There are restrictions on the amount of increase that can be added each year to the tax requisition. Operating deficits are not allowed. Any overage in one year is counted as a deficit in the following year and reduces the overall money available to operate the service. Fire services in Gun Lake started in 1994 under SLRD Bylaw 559 as amended. It is a financial contribution service only. There is no fire protection service established by bylaw. If a contribution service essentially means that the regional district simply collects the money, processes it, and turns it around to the Gun Lake Fire Protection Society. All equipment apparatus owned by the society, and the hall where the society operates is leased to the society by the SLRD. And this is the fire protection map for Gun Lake. It should be noted that the Gun Lake Volunteer Fire Protection Service is not a fire department. Its primary role is to provide initial attack protection against wildfire until the BC Wildfire Service can arrive. And moving on. The Gun Lake Fire Protection Society covers an area of 11.5 square kilometers. It's equipped and trained to respond to brush fires and interface fires in coordination with the BC Wildfire Service. It's currently under the capable leadership of Al Layton. There's approximately 20 members during summer months, approximately 5 to 10 in the off season. These numbers, I believe, have been increased over the last year, possibly doubled. There's training on pumps and equipment regularly and ongoing during the summer especially, and all members are trained to the S100 basic wildland firefighter level. The department does not have a fire truck. It also does not have a ladder truck. What it does have is 3 utility trailers with an assortment of wildfire and forestry tools that allow the GLFPS to intervene when wildfire strikes at Gun Lake. And 2 of the trailers are towable by ATV, allowing off-road access. Back in 2013, the SLRD conducted a complete fire service review of all our fire services, including Gun Lake. That fire service review noted a number of requirements for updates and improvements, etc. From August 2014 to August 2015, the SLRD worked with a fire services consultant, Darren Oike, who's the current fire chief in Lillooet, and also someone with an established history working with fire services. And part of what he did was to produce action plans created for each fire department or fire service to address immediate priorities. Along with that work was significant research on the way that other regional districts support fire departments and regulate them, as well as the purchase of replacement fire apparatus and interim agreements and declarations of service level to bring fire services within the regional district up to the minimum standards playbook requirements of the BC Office of the Fire Commissioner. Our fire services consultant also worked with fire departments to implement a records management system using FDM records management software. Training materials, the cost of which is shared by all fire services, are now available to each department or fire service, and those are geared to bringing firefighters up to the NFPA or BC Basic Firefighter Certification level, and occupational health and safety requirements have been explained to all volunteer fire departments / fire services, and occupational health and safety committees have been formed. For the Gun Lake Fire Protection Service or Society, it's a little bit of a unique situation because they were included in the Fire Service Review despite the fact that they are not officially a fire department. So a lot of the things that apply to other fire departments don't apply to the society. In this case, the establishment of a safety committee was advised. I believe that's been completed, as well as some stuff around occupational health and safety. Looking at the future development of the Gun Lake Fire Service Society, there were a number of options that were identified to which we've added based on our research in conducting this consultation. So the first of which was the expansion and consolidation of Braylorn and Gun Lake to a combined Area A fire department, including Goldbridge, Gun Creek, and Totten Lake Road. The other option was to look at a Gun Lake Fire Protection Area tax requisition to a level that permits the development of a fire brigade with structural fire suppression capability, so an additional responsibility that would be layered over the wildland services currently provided by the Gun Lake Fire Protection Society. And the third option, and this was an option that was given to all of the departments, was consider or not whether to proceed on the current path with minimal funding and equipment. Essentially, do we terminate the service? An additional option, though not included in the Fire Service Review, was conversion of the existing service to a fire prevention service. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it has not yet been fully scoped. So when we start to get into standards associated with fire protection and fire insurance, the place where we end up is the Fire Underwriter Survey. And this is an insurance body organization that provides insurance companies information about a community's fire protection services. And they look at two things in any community. We're going to focus on dwelling protection grades, which are the residential classification that the FUS provides. It's a classification that's used by insurance companies to set property insurance rates. And the FUS is the only organization authorized in Canada to publish fire insurance grades. And the grading reflects a community's ability to handle fires in single-family dwellings. So we're talking about structural fire protection. On a scale of, it's a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the best. DPGs 1 and 2 are the DPGs that are usually associated with urban departments. They're very resource intensive and require a lot of infrastructure development. Class 5, which is currently where Gun Lake finds itself, indicates that the fire protection does not meet the minimum criteria to be recognized for insurance grading purposes. And this is about, whether you have a fire hall, whether you have a pumper truck, whether you have a hydrant system, all that kind of stuff. So when a community improves its DPG, insurance rates generally come down, even though each insurance company is able to interpret the DPG based against their own policies. The lower the DPG, the larger the discount given in fire insurance rates. The factors determining dwelling protection grades are quite complicated. This is just a very high-level overview of what's required. In order to achieve DPGs of 1 or 2, you can see here that you require the presence of career firefighters on duty 24/7, a minimum area covered by the response envelope, and fire hydrant systems. For 3A and 3B and 4, 3A still requires a hydrant system, and it requires a minimum of 15 volunteers available at any given time. 3B and 4 do not require hydrant systems, but they must be able to provide firefighters with water reliably. And there's a number of standards associated with that within the DPG criteria. And 5, again, which is where Gun Lake is considered to be unprotected. This is just a review of some of the terminology that we see in the preceding slides. Again, what's a standard pumper? What's a water tanker? A standpipe. So many properties have standpipes, but these are not recognized as part of a fire suppression system because there is no engineered national standard for them. However, private water supplies, such as those found on industrial sites or many farms, may be recognized for fire insurance grading purposes if the owner-operator can supply the appropriate documentation to the fire underwriter's survey. Other things that the DPGs assess is firefighters and whether they work and reside within a reasonable travel distance to the fire hall. The 8-kilometer from the fire hall to the edge of the fire service area is based on the FUS's assumptions around how long it takes the fire department to respond and still have a reasonable ability to put a fire out. The absolute minimum number of volunteer firefighters considered within the fire insurance grading is 10, and maximum age of apparatus that can be considered is 30. Most insurance companies don't go that far out. Usually it's 15 volunteer firefighters and an absolute maximum of 20 years for equipment. In areas without municipal firefighting hydrants, firefighting presents a significant challenge. So in order to meet a DPG of 3B or 4, a community has to be able to develop and demonstrate that they have the ability to draft and pump water and then transport that water to the fire event. And it must be a system that's available 24/7, 365 to meet the FUS standards. Along with all of that, the DPG looks at the fire hall site and the fire hall, the firefighting equipment that's available, the emergency communications that's been provided, the capital reserves that are in place for equipment replacement and apparatus replacement when required, and personal protective clothing for the firefighters. Obviously, when we look at Gun Lake, which is at the very beginning of a journey here, we need to establish an annual operating budget to cover all of this. So, the DPGs relate to insurance premiums in a number of ways. They're used by insurance companies to set the cost of fire insurance in a given area. And when we talk about developing a fire service for a community, what we always look at is the cost of the insurance currently. So for Gun Lake, it's the maximum amount versus the cost of providing structural fire protection service. And ideally, the additional taxation would be offset by the reduction in insurance premiums that every homeowner would pay. However, not always or generally the case. That said, when we start to look at the value of something like a fire brigade, that's inherent value to the community in the protection of life, safety, and property, even though we're not necessarily seeing the net financial benefit of reduced insurance premiums. This is the impact of insurance premiums from the current FUS DPG system. So 5, this is where Gun Lake is considered unprotected. They receive no discount. 4 and 3B, semi-protected. That's a 60% reduction from the unprotected rate, plus or minus. And then 3A, 2, and 1 are considered protected, and that's an additional 32% reduction from semi-protected rate. Looking at the combined department for all of Area A, and we'll explore that a little more in a minute, we would be going for a 4 or 3B, which is a 60% reduction in insurance premiums from Gun Lake's current unprotected status. So, what would it cost to put a fire department in for Gun Lake? This is not the combined department. This would be the individual department. You can see that the capital expenditure required for a fire department at Gun Lake that's FUS compliant, so that realizes an insurance benefit, is just under $1 million. When we look at the capital budget for an Area A FUS compliant volunteer fire department centered in Goldbridge, what we're looking at is about $500,000 in costs for capital. This slide just refers to the current tax assessment base for all of Area A. and you can see it's fairly substantial. This slide, I apologize that it's very small and a little bit busy, but it simply lays out, the current parcel tax requisition that the Gun Lake Fire Protection Society receives, and then it looks at some of the costs associated with the options that we're presenting today. So, fire brigade service operated by a society, about $32,000 a year. Combined Area A department, we're looking at about $221,000 a year, and a combined Area A with regional district administration, and that's an overlay that I'll talk about in a minute, is slightly more than that. But when we look at moving from the current service into a fire protection service or fire department for Gun Lake, the fire hall might be the easiest part. The money might be the easiest part. Really, it's having the sufficient volunteers and the water system in place to respond to the fire, as well as looking at hall placement and things like that. So it's possible, looking at some of the options, that not every resident that pays into the service will receive the same benefit from reduced home insurance. That said, the establishment of a full fire service could take a number of years, will take a number of years to develop. And just a restatement that DPG 1 and 2, though they are the greatest reduction in insurance rates, are generally not possible in rural areas. You need the municipal infrastructure of a city to maintain that. Regional District Fire Service Administration is an idea that we're exploring to support all of our fire services across the regional district. Some of the key features of the model that we're working with right now, all volunteer fire departments would become SLRD operated departments. Currently, like the Gun Lake Fire Protection Society, several of the departments are operated by societies on a contribution model. Those would be converted over to SLRD operated departments like Britannia Beach and Garibaldi. All chiefs would become paid employees of the SLRD. I'll talk about why that is in a minute. A dedicated staff member from the SLRD would support all of the chiefs with administrative tasks, budgeting, scheduling, training, equipment maintenance, etc. Societies would serve as an advisory and support role to volunteer fire departments rather than being the operating entity. So they would work with fundraising, supporting firefighters in their community, and other activities. The cost for a regional district fire service administration would need to be shared across all 6 fire service areas, including Gun Lake, depending on where the community wants to go. And it would also include a new bylaw that would be an overarching fire services bylaw that would define the regional district's relationship with each of the fire service areas and give some standardization to service levels, playbook requirements, that sort of thing. The Regional District Fire Service Administration could also facilitate sharing soft and hard resources, so training, expertise, as well as equipment potentially, resources between the regional district fire departments, and coordinate district-wide growth and improvement. The idea is that a Regional District Fire Service Administration gives a unified approach to service delivery across the SLRD while preserving operational autonomy for the fire chiefs. The fire chiefs at each of the volunteer departments remain the ones in control of fire scenes, and they have the expertise and training to do that. But the service administration model gives a structure that assists departments with change at their own pace. Obviously, some of our departments need more work than others, and this is the idea that the regional district can assist those folks with catching up where it's needed or with moving forward, etc., through financial and strategic support and guidance. The Regional District Fire Service Administration model would see all assets, that's all trucks, apparatus, etc., transferred into SLRD control, and the SLRD would take over responsibility for leases, ongoing maintenance, equipment renewal, all that kind of stuff. The SLRD Fire Chiefs Committee, which had its first meeting in February 2016, would be central to this approach, and that's bringing the chiefs together once or twice a year so that they can share their expertise and their challenges and come up with solutions that work across the regional district to the kinds of challenges they're encountering. And that lends an increased sustainability to the fire service, as well as the addition of mutual aid agreements, bulk purchases of consumables and equipment, and then sharing training opportunities and resources, etc. Paid fire chiefs. Now, I mentioned this a few slides ago. The idea behind having paid fire chiefs, and we're not necessarily talking about a full salary here. Each of the fire chiefs in the regional district currently receives a stipend or honorarium. We would take that amount and convert it over into a salary. And the reason that we would do that under an administration model is to free up each of the departments from having to pay their own work safe and liability insurance, which, you know, in the case of the Gun Lake Fire Protection Society, I think is about 80 or 90% of the budget annually. With the chief being a paid employee of the regional district, they are able to supervise directly all of their volunteers, and those volunteers then become covered under the SLRD insurance indemnification. The savings that are realized could be redirected back into the services or towards paying for the fire service district administration. So the options that are on the table for future directions for Gun Lake, there are 5 of them, and we'll go over them individually in detail in the following slides. I want to be very clear on one point here. This is not the final decision point for this process. Each of these options presented before you will require the SLRD to come back and do future consultation, and in most cases it will require a vote from those individuals who pay into the service. What this process is geared towards is narrowing down the options that each community prefers. So ideally we would like to come away from this consultation with one either very strong option or 2 options that we can then develop to bring back to the community, and we can let the others fall to the wayside because of lack of interest. So we'll go forward now with each of the options. There is a survey linked following this presentation, and your participation is strongly encouraged. Thank you. So option 1 is a Gun Lake Fire Brigade, and it's the same service area as the current Gun Lake Fire Protection Society model. Be operated by the society as a contribution service, meaning that the SLRD would simply collect and disperse the annual requisition. It would be an exterior firefighting only department, and it would not realize any insurance rate reductions. The required requisition for this would be about $32,000 annually, with an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value at Gun Lake of $30. Option 2 is a combined Area A Regional District Fire Department. This has an expanded service area, as previously mentioned. This would be an SLRD operated department, again exterior only, but it would provide a significant reduction in insurance rates within the 8 or potentially 13 kilometer radius. The regional district does have some latitude to negotiate with FUS around distances from the fire hall. This will take 2 to 3 years at a minimum to establish. The annual requisition for this would be about $222,000 a year, and an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value at $134 annually. Option 3 is the same as option 2 with the addition of the regional district administration overlay. This would be slightly more expensive at about $238,000 a year, an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value of $144. Option 4, again, an option that was given to all of the departments in the fire service review, cease operations. So no fire protection, including wildland fire protection currently provided by the GLFPS, no reduction in fire insurance rates, and of course an annual cost of $0. Option 5 is conversion to a fire prevention service. And again, we haven't fully scoped this possibility, but a fire prevention service would fund activities to reduce the wildfire threat around Gun Lake. Projects on private and public land would be possible. It would not result in a reduction of fire insurance premiums. We haven't looked at the cost for this annually, but very broadly, it would probably be similar to the costs for a fire brigade. So please do take the time to fill out the survey that follows. My name is Ryan Wainwright. I'm the Emergency Program Manager for the SLRD as well as the Interim Fire Service Administrator. My email and telephone number are on this slide. Please get a hold of me if you have any questions. Thank you very much.